This week we marked the 50th yahrzeit of Rabbi Abram Joshua Heschel, a fighter for justice in the name of the Jewish people on behalf of all people. It is an incredible honor to stand with all of you in the nexus of his memory and the memory of his dear friend, an American prophet, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Here we are, friends. Here we are about to mark Martin Luther King Jr. Day and to read Parshat Shemot, the very first Torah portion in the book of Exodus. We read it in shul tomorrow. We've been reading it all week. We've been learning it and studying it our whole lives, not only when it comes around in the Torah cycle, but also every Pesach. Not only every Pesach, every time we say the Shema. Not only every time we say the Shema, but every time we pass by a mezuzah. Every time we remember what it is to be a human being and to see another human being and to treat them like a human being. Because we are told 36 times in the Torah to never oppress the stranger because we know what it was to be a stranger in a strange land. This parsha, this book, this moment, all of it speaks to each other. I want to look at one part of this week's parsha and then recite a little bit from Dr. King's writings. On Monday, I have a tradition, and some of you might too, of reciting a letter from a Birmingham jail, a piece of what I consider American scripture, written by Dr. King while incarcerated for the crime of demanding freedom through nonviolent protest. Here we are, his students, some of us reciting the scripture that poured from his soul, smuggled out of the cell on the margins of a newspaper, which is where he wrote it. In a certain sense, the way the Talmud was written on the margin of previous generations' writings. First the Parsha, then some Dr. King commentary. This Parsha tells the tale of both dehumanization and the stirrings of freedom. Pharaoh and his advisors see the proliferation, the growth of the Israelite community within the borders of Egypt, and others them, says they are becoming too many. We can't trust that they are loyal. How many times in modern American history, recently, under the former president's administration, and still in the corners, the dark corners of American society, do people consider Jews unloyal? Remember in Charlottesville, the marchers with tiki torches, white supremacists, who were, of course, shouting racism, and the words they shared were, "Jews will not replace us." It tells us that othering is not done, and that all othered people, which is actually just about everybody with a heart, have something in common. We take turns as the target of hatred, which means standing together. We have learned the lessons that should demand of us unquantifiable love in response. Here, friends, here, in this week's Parsha, Pharaoh begins implementing not only dehumanization, but a campaign of violence. And among the first steps that he takes is to charge midwives with murdering the babies they delivered if the babies are boys. I want to read to you just a little bit of Hebrew from the Parsha, and then I want to raise a question. V'yomer melech Mitzrayim li me'aldot ha'ivriot, and I'll use this translation. The king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, asher shem ha'achat Shifra v'shem ha'shenit Puah, one of whom was named Shifra, and the other one was named Puah. V'yomer, and saying, when you deliver the Hebrew women, look at the birth stool, which was a stone upon which birthing women rested their legs sometimes as part of the practice of birth. If it is a boy, kill him, and if it is a girl, let her live. The midwives, fearing God, did not do as the king of Egypt had told them. They let the boys live. And for this they were rewarded by God. But I want to point out something interesting. There's a lot to say here. Number one is, they feared God, and so they didn't listen to the king. When you know that sanctity is being erased. The image of God is being assaulted. You know that you cannot follow this systemic approach, no matter who is in charge, when it commands us to act in an unholy way, to attack a fellow image of God. We know. Not only is it wrong, it's blasphemy. Violence is an act of blasphemy, taught us Rabbi Heschel and taught us Dr. King. But I want to point out that the Hebrew here, if you'd like to look it up, it's chapter 1, verse 15 of the book of Exodus. The king of Egypt said to, in the Hebrew is Hamiyaldot ha'ivriot, which is translated often as the Hebrew midwives. Sounds like they were midwives from the Israelite community, but in fact, that's not necessarily what the Hebrew says. Hamiyaldot ha'ivriot means those midwives who served Hebrew birthing mothers. There's a debate in the Torah whether or not Shifra and Puah were in fact, we'll say Jewish, but I mean Israelite. There's such a midrash that says that Shifra and Puah were actually nicknames for Miriam and Yocheved, who was Miriam, Aaron, and Moshe's mother. But by making them Jewish, we erase part of the majesty of the story, which is to say, they were non-Israelite heroes, without whom there would have been no story, no Torah. What is it that calls us to be conscientious objectors? What kind of faith is it that demands of us non-compliance to an unjust system? Dr. King modeled by learning from figures like Gandhi, who in turn learned from classic philosophers, who in turn had a faith that united all people. Here is some of what Dr. King wrote. It's in a wonderful book called The Words of Martin Luther King Jr. This was selected by Coretta Scott King, his wife. Something should remind us once more that the great things in this universe are things that we never see. You walk out at night and look up at the beautiful stars as they bedeck the heavens like swinging lanterns of eternity, and you think you can see it all. Oh no. You can never see the law of gravitation that holds them there. There are invisible laws that you have to close your eyes to see. Love is the most durable power in the world. This creative force is the most potent instrument available in mankind's quest for peace and security. The absence of love in our Parsha, in Pharaoh's heart, is fully present in the hearts of the midwives. Worship at its best is a social experience with people on all levels of life coming together to realize their oneness and unity under God. Whenever the church, and we must include the synagogue here, consciously or unconsciously caters to one class, it loses the spiritual force of the whosoever will, let them come. We say this on Pesach, Kol dichvin, everyone in need, come. When shuls have admissions processes, when belonging is only affordable by some. It is in danger of becoming little more than a social club with a thin veneer of religiosity. We dare not ignore these words. Just a little bit more. The belief that God will do everything for man is as untenable as the belief that man can do everything for himself. It, too, is based on a lack of faith. We must learn that to expect God to do everything while we do nothing is not faith, but superstition. One last piece of Dr. King. A religion true to its nature must also be concerned about man's social conditions. Religion deals with both earth and heaven, both time and eternity. Religion operates not only on the vertical plane, but also on the horizontal. It not only seeks to integrate men with God, but to integrate men with men, and each man within himself. Friends, when we read this Parsha, and we see dehumanization through the campaign against the Israelites by Pharaoh and Egypt, and we see the recovery of a sparkling humanity by Shifra and Pua, the call to Moshe from a bush that is not consumed, that says, yes, once I spoke to your ancestor Abraham and said, take off all of that which you know, put your shoes on and get moving. That was Abraham's way. But your way, Moshe, I'm going to teach through you humility. When you meet me this first time at the bush, take off your shoes. Feel the earth beneath your feet, and remember that it is from earth that you came. Adam from Adamah. To be a human being is to be of this earth, and to remember that there is nothing that distinguishes you as better or even separate from your fellow human being. To love me, says God, is to love your neighbor, is to love the oppressed, is to love the stranger, is to fight for justice, and to know that sometimes you have to close your eyes to see what is real. Friends, the world that we have in front of us, it's not good enough. Not good enough for our children, not good enough for anyone's children. Certainly, and that which unites us, not good enough for God's children. May we hear the words of our prophets. May we heed them. May we, yes, take the time to study the words of Dr. King, to study the words of Rabbi Heschel, to study the words of our Torah. But if we truly take them seriously, we're going to get up from our seats and go do something good for someone else. This Shabbos, may we let that message in. May we remember our complicated, harsh history and the miracles that can flow through us to bring our world one step closer to freedom. I hope you have a good Shabbos, friends. Hope you take the time to rest. Once Shabbos is done, can't wait to get to work with all of you. Please check out all of the activities through UJA, starting with studying on Sunday, acting on Monday, working for justice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and every day until the need is much, much less. We've got a lot of work ahead, friends, and good, sweet, kind souls with which to do it. Hope you have a good Shabbos. Let's sing our way into it. I'll need your help, I think, so I'll play, sing as long as I can, and then you jump in. Shabbos, friends. See you Monday morning.